What's going on? This is Malcolm, and I am going live with another Destiny 2 video. Um, I don't hear my audio. Oh, I got it muted. Cool. um, that may be how I get around this. But I am trying a build that I have long since disregarded, but I'm wearing it just because it looks cool on this outfit. Of course, the reason why we put on anything. The Mask of the Quiet One. It's supposed to give you grenade energy and healing. I don't ever notice it working. But right now is Grenadier in the Strike playlist. You got all these void bonuses. Um, you know, it's a pretty decent build. I mean, it's got lots of strength and discipline. Yeah, I've been trying to decide if I want to do the Towering Barricade or this one here. I think I might do that one. Um, I think I'm gonna go with the Rally Barricade because I got some fast reloaders here. Yeah, it's pretty good. Instability and yeah, do the one that makes my thing orbit more. But either way, let me go ahead and get started. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my channels and stuff. So as I'm doing my lives, it has become a really good routine for me for organizing my thoughts. Um, I write a blog and I'm working on a book, and it is around our darker emotions and really thinking about how we classify mental illness as this idea of being broken and what that does, the consequences of that. I mean, it has some benefits, but it also has consequences like everything. One of the benefits of the brokenness story is that it encourages people to seek help. If you believe that your erratic behavior is caused primarily by fluctuations of brain chemicals, it encourages you to go to the doctor. Um, the downside, of course, is that that's not the whole story. It doesn't really get into what caused that imbalance of chemicals. Most people will assume it's genetic, but most mental illness isn't even slightly considered heritable. So, I mean, like, why would it be a genetic thing? And so, if it's environmental, the primary cause of your mental problems are things in your environment, right? Things that happen to you, traumas, faulty ways of thinking, maybe some neural structures that for people who are, neurodivergent, either like autism spectrum or ADHD, they're actually physical differences in neural pathways that cause, say, excitability or, um, troubles with emotional regulation, things like that. But they're almost always accompanied by some sort of faulty map of the world, really. A flawed way of seeing things. That, of course, those structures help facilitate, but are not wholly responsible for, you know? Um, and so when you realize that there are some parts of this that are expected, they're the natural result of certain things happening to you, you could still fall into the trap of saying you're broken, like this thing in your environment broke you. Or you could say that this is just how humans, deal with XYZ, I thought one of the most beautiful examples of this had to do with some examinations of um, indigenous cultures and how they dealt with people who would most likely be institutionalized. Um, People who were having hallucinations and visions and such were often seen to be, say, communing with, ancestors or deities or whatever, and the community would actually envelop them. They would dance with them. They would almost celebrate their insanity. I mean, they're still insane. They're absolutely in another world, but they didn't see that as a bad thing. You know what I mean? And they're visiting the ancestors. Uh, it didn't solve everything. Don't get me wrong. It's not like these indigenous cultures solved the problem of mental illness. It's just like it was a way more, you know, um, humane. That's all. And what's interesting is that there are like super liberal socialist governments within Europe that are recreating some of that. Like mental hospitals where it's just like more like a hotel than a prison, and people come and stay at the hotel, like college students and people who are, down on their luck would stay with people who are mentally challenged, people who have disabilities too profound to take care of themselves. They live in a place where, other people who are, say, economically challenged or dealing with shit can help each other. That's a real thing. I think that was in Sweden. I don't remember. There's always some Nordic, Icelandic country or something. You know what I mean? It's always one of those cold, isolated, tiny socialist countries. They're always doing some crazy shit. It's just like the antithesis of American, but also awesome.
Important target, Guardian. Kill or kill.
So, so that's part of it. I think I was having a conversation with Greg about the book Night Vision, which is very much in line with what I'm writing about. And, she comes at mental illness through a philosophical lens. Particularly, I think she studied existentialism, Latin American philosophy, and religion. And she used a lot of things I've heard before, but not in such detail and not in this way. It was good. I just realized I like this build mainly because I can probably use this with anything. When Grenadier's on, I could switch to stasis or stay on void. I think right here I kind of want to pop a super. I don't know.
Kill them. They are dead. You are. Round 2. Dismantle mines. Or victory will earn. You face final round. A mighty cabal challenges.
I've got to figure out the audio issues with my input, but so something else I've been dealing with is this multicam editing. I really wanted to have a video to promote Greg's live stream
One
for tomorrow.
treasure.
I could barely even get them loaded into the player. It's just so the files are so large.
Looks like the trickster left you a present. That was her. But she made me laugh. Hey, get ready for the biggest gunfight ever fought in prison. That crazy servitor's down here. Oh, it's here. Touch it. Thanks. Thanks for your help out here, chosen one. So, hey, confession time. Spider asked me to get a crew together to take the prison back from the barons. You did great.
So
I'll clean up
it's not a
behind
bad
you.
one.
Spider will sell this place back to the Awoken.
But I really did like the armor they did this season. I don't know. I guess it must have been on the season pass. I was like, oh, that shit looks cool. It's like some liquid water thing going on. And then, of course, you can shade it however you want it. Probably look better if it was blue because that's supposed to be water. But I thought it went well with the mask. It just looks crazy looking. But that's how Desi is. They just have some weird looks, you know what I mean? You just kind of get used to it over time. Okay, let me try.
Scions are already deep in the Vex network, and it looks like they have Imperial backup. You catch them if you hustle.
Lucky for you, Amanda Holiday runs a door-to-door service. I've dropped you close to the entry point.
And lucky for me, she also has a sense of humor, which is refreshing after working for Solid.
That's a pretty low bar to clear, but I'll take the compliment.
That damn asshole. Yeah, fuck you. Hate you, shield bash motherfuckers. Yeah.
You're on the right track. Keep drilling down. You'll hit gold soon enough.
We're picking up big energy spikes below your feet. Odds are good. That's where their commander is.
What the fuck is going on? Trying to send something on Telegram and I don't know what the fuck is going on here. So it's I'm in a weird place with my editing. And this is because on Wednesday, I have 5 videos from, the combination video and the 4 of us individually. The quality of the video is very high and it's making it cause my video editing software to crash. So my solution is to downgrade the video, scale it down. I'm hoping that it doesn't, defeat the purpose of having high quality video if I don't have the computing power to actually use it, because it's just like impossible to do some of these things. The multicam editing requires a lot of computing power, really. Quite frankly, just son of a bitch. Are you fucking kidding me? Those bumping shits. Like, you get hit, you tap a wall. I was lucky that I did not hit the wall. I would have probably died. I mean, jeez. Okay, let me see what I got on my. Yeah, I got quite a few bounties now. That's good. Let's do auto rifle. Oh, that one does not have the repulsor brace. Okay, that's fine. It makes it easier. I have another one with repulsor brace on it. Dragonfly could be good though. Not really. Not compared to this perk. Almost makes me wonder why Dragonfly is even on that.
What you got?
Know how to get their attention.
At this point, it seems like we should just let the vets take care of these scions themselves. This is their territory, after all.
They're not successful. Or worse, what if they are? And they use the scions to upgrade different changes. Wasn't it long ago those possibilities broke you out into a cold sweat?
I know, I know. We've just got so many enemies, and all enemies with each other. We kill them to save us the effort every now and again.
So, yeah, I think I mentioned this on one of the gaming lives that I did. I am already planning my topic out for Wednesday. And something that worked very well this past Wednesday was multiple videos on a single topic. So I have one on masculinity and culture and dealing with the types of movies that men like. Now, this topic has fascinated me because of several things. Homoeroticism uh, is high up on that list, and that has to do with the fact that I remember, growing up and having like what you would call celebrity crushes on, kind of hyper masculine men in movies. And of course, I'm gay, so that makes sense. But what I also didn't understand was that straight people had a crush on these men too. And it wasn't like they wanted to fuck them, it was because they wanted to be them. They were idols, you know. And probably a good example would be like um I don't know. I think of like a Stallone, Schwarzenegger in that genre back then, and now maybe like a Batista, the Rock, or something like that. Where they're in all these action movies, and they're it's a lot of like nuance to it. So an interesting thing about action movies will be the fact that men in these action movies actually show each other affection, and like they hug and you know do shit that if you realize, like in real life, like friends don't do, but because they were in like some sort of um deadly situation, they're all of a sudden can be more affectionate to one another. And someone pointed out, like, this is actually part of the genre, like this a desire that straight men have to be physically, like, like to hug their friends. You're not trying to fuck them, but that's the thing, they're afraid that people will think that they want to fuck their friends, on some level. Maybe they don't even understand this on a conscious level, but the sort of action hero genre understood this um, in ways that I think are real fascinating. Another point was that, you know, choreographed action scenes are often set to music and are like dance numbers if you really think about it. Um, a lot of times I remember thinking, like, in my favorite shows, when people would break out into song and dance, it would kind of make me uncomfortable in some weird way. And it wasn't because I didn't like the music. I just realized, like, my homophobia was being activated in some way, and I didn't even recognize that as such. Um, Need to get some.
Dense hive signatures in the vicinity of the head. Like this. It feels like a trap.
I might have to try Worm God Caress with that punch. I'll do it next time it's on Brawler. Of course, if I do that, I could just do Doomfang, but I don't know. But yeah, so masculinity through culture is one thing. And I have a second video from a creator on TikTok that's just talking about masculinity versus anti-femininity. And I've touched on this a little bit, and it's interesting. I don't know.
That's her. That's Navova.
Because I don't think they're the same thing, right? Come here, bitch. Put that machine gun in your face. Yeah, Void is really strong. I was thinking about the artifact that they previewed. The Void debuffs. I think one of them makes things volatile. What the fuck just happened here? Oh. That was pretty fun. Okay, so I think I got all of the videos edited. Not edited, but shrunk. I'm trying to post it to Telegram. It's kind of acting weird. I don't know. Oof. Yeah, I guess I got all the bounties done. I could switch by now. That was pretty fun, though. For me, the most thing I need to do is actually go to my vault and delete as much as I can. I'd like to have at least a page, like 50 slots in my vault, and at least 3 open slots in each slot of each character. So I'm not filling all of my characters with items, and also like clear out my vault. And yeah, I guess I could do that. Let me check what's on the news real quick. I hadn't heard the Bulwark podcast today. Did they come out with one? Yeah, there it is.
Recuerda ir a Walmart por todo lo que necesitas para matar la sed y saciar los antojos. Puede ser que hagas un barbecue comiendo unas Lay's limón o disfrutes de las...
I tell you, I am blown away by this news cycle. There's so much going on.
How is it August 18th? Remember when I was a kid, August 18th was like Shark Week, news cycle. Like there'd be a shark sighting outside of San Diego, and that would be all that people would talk about for a few days.
Yeah. So what is the most gobsmacking story of the day? I don't know. Let's just reach our hand out. You can't say that Donald Trump and his lawyers don't have a sense of humor.
I guess that's true.
What was your first reaction when you heard that they wanted to delay? I'm going to call it the coup case, the January 6th case. They wanted to delay it to 2026.
It's a bold ask. It's not an interesting ask. I was also intrigued that, in the DC case, they asked we have to move it to West Virginia. But in the Georgia case, now we got to move that to federal court. But, why not? Who knows? Well, consistency is not necessarily needed here.
I think it's highly unlikely that Judge Tanya Chutkan is going to be delaying the case for more than 2.5 years. But, it is kind of an interesting tell because, if you're accused of something falsely and you want to be exonerated, don't you want your day in court like right now? And Trump's position is basically, yeah, kind of like I would like a date in April of like never.
You would think so. Speaking of tells, also he announced a big press conference at Bedminster on Monday. I was blocking out my schedule. We were going to do a YouTube reaction to it. I was very excited. He was going to reveal all the fraud details. And he's like, well, actually, we're just going to file these in court documents. It's like, oh yeah, right. Because if you had the proof that proved that you were innocent, you definitely would want. Donald Trump definitely would want to keep him under seal.
Yeah. How many times has Donald Trump done this, saying, in 2 weeks I'm going to announce, my healthcare plan, or I'm going to announce my infrastructure plan, or I'm going to hold this press conference explaining Melania Trump's immigration status, and it never happens. And this one,
or Obama's birth certificate.
Yeah, exactly. The moment he announced, I have this big press conference and I'm going to lay out the definitive evidence, I'm thinking this is never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So my shocked face, Trump cancels press conference on election fraud claims attorneys advice. The attorneys probably were saying something like, you do this, we're quitting. Right?
Like there are only 4 of us left.
I'm going to get to my other favorite story of the day just in a moment. Actually, I have so many favorite stories of the day. The Kenneth Cheeseborough, fellow Cheesehead, Wisconsin native, we are so proud, alleged architect of the fake electors plot. Turns out that he was following Alex Jones around the Capitol grounds on January 6th. This is a CNN exclusive. Can we just put this to the side here?
Yeah, okay.
Because we have to start with this story. And I said in my newsletter this morning, I really had hoped to write about anything except Ron DeSantis's, failing fumbling campaign. It's like we've kind of done that a lot, But I'm sorry, I don't know how you don't talk about this weird moment where this, not a leak, the super PAC post the memo about his debate strategy here. Now, before we get into this, I've been describing him as, real man of political genius, but it occurs to me that there are a lot of folks out there that do not understand that reference. You do, right, Tim?
Oh, yeah. This is a formative childhood ad campaign.
Yeah, this is Bud Light. This is a famous ad campaign. In case you remember the real men of genius?
Budweiser presents Real Men of Genius.
Real men of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Real.
Love the falsetto.
Oh, and they go there, we salute you, and just one after another. Can't even go through all of them. But they were classics. So every time I see something like this, I think, no, Ron DeSantis, real man of genius. Okay, so you commented on this. In fact, I quote you in my headline of the newsletter saying this is really kind of what did you say, one of the most WTF leaks in memory. But you have to sort of step back. This is what I wrote. You take a moment to consider where Ron DeSantis is in. And he's trailing Trump by 39 points. He's shedding votes, and donors. He's reset his campaign about a dozen times, right? Fired staff. He has to fly commercial now. He's been trying to, imitate a normal human being, somebody who's likable. That's not working. He's being mercilessly trolled by Trump. And so he has a chance to really turn things around next week, right? Maybe his last chance. He's got to come to Milwaukee. He's going to be on the debate stage. And he's been given a gift by the political gods, right? Because the debate takes place the same week that his main rival for the Republican nomination is going to be arrested, fingerprinted, have his mugshot taken after being indicted for his fourth time. And his main strategy is going to be defend Donald Trump. Mr. Miller.
Attack Vivek.
Sledgehammer Vivek.
I'm so sick of talking about Tiny D. I mean, for a while, there was some joy in watching his suffering just because he earned it so much, just with his slavish sucking up to Donald Trump and don't say gay and all the fucking anti-Trumpers that were, kind of guilt trips saying, you guys have to get on board with DeSantis or else you're a Trump supporter. So just watching all of their pain, there has been a Schadenfreude element to that I've enjoyed. But I'm getting bored with it. It's like every week. It's like on the next level on this podcast, on the website. It's like, we got to keep talking about how much of a disaster he is, but I really could do the full hour on this memo. Yeah. Like this is like the cherry on top of the Schadenfreude cake because it's unbelievable. I mean, it is. I'll just leave this little teaser. It is also a little triggering because I had a bad debate leak in my career. We can talk about it after, but this one is so much worse. It's like you look at this memo, and on the Real Men of Genius list, we have to mention Jeff Rowe, the supposed Svengali strategist of the super PAC. There are a million articles about that
genius behind the Ted Cruz campaign.
The next Karl Rove, and everyone was recruiting to have Jeff Rowe. Trump wanted him, Youngkin and DeSantis. And it's like he runs this firm, Axiom Strategies, and that is where this memo that we're about to talk about, like they posted it on their own fucking website. It's like, how do you think someone found that, guys? Like,
this is not a leak. It's like we're putting this out because we want people to see this.
And the memo treats Ron DeSantis like he is a child, like he is a dumb child, like a low IQ child, and it talks to him like a baby. It is so condescending. There's a type of memo that you would write to like Herschel Walker, right? Like a first-time candidate who's never debated and like it's a celebrity or something and doesn't even really know politics, and you're a consultant. You come in and like you've been charged with like trying to give somebody the ABCs of how to debate. Like that is what this memo is for a guy that's a two-time sitting governor that is supposedly the great white hope for the non-Trump Republicans. It's like, please show emotion. It's like when your wife, tell a story about your wife that shows emotion. It's like if you were attacked, pivot, to attack another candidate, rather than responding to the attack. It's like media training 101. It's like Roger Ailes once.
Post-it note, be human.
Yeah. It's like, what? I mean, so the tone of this whole thing, it gives them little things. It's like I'm writing to my kid, like, okay, you got to brush your teeth for 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to set a timer. All right. It's like attack Joe Biden 3 to 5 times. State your positive vision 2 to 3 times. Why do they think he would need this? Okay, and then the specifics of the advice is stupid. And then you get to, the one-dimensional chess element of this, where it's like, here's how you attack Vivek. We're going to give you some fake nicknames to try out. Fake Vivek, Robot Vivek. And then here's how you deal with Chris Christie.
Hindu Vivek.
It's like, here's how you deal with Chris Christie. And it's like, you are gift wrapping Vivek and Chris Christie the response.
This is the part, I'm sorry, I actually have tears rolling down my cheeks right now here because it is so bad. As you point out, it does make the candidate seem like a pathetic baby. And then, of course, it neutralizes all these attacks because you telegraph to Chris Christie that you're going to do this. The most dangerous debater on the stage, whatever you think about Chris Christie, he is not the guy that you want pivoting on you, particularly when you have all of your talking points. Remember how he destroyed Marco Rubio? He said, well, there's the talking point again. Okay, this is going to be almost too easy. Christie's about to be going, are you kidding me? I mean, really? It's like, he's just going to look at him and say, is that what your handlers told you to say? Are you now going to, call Vivek fake Vivek? Are you going to, it's just going to be.
Sorry, Ron, I already knew this attack was coming because your puppet master told the New York Times about it last week. Like, you're the big donors that are telling you what to say. Sorry, that's not going to land for me. Brian Jones, who's an old colleague of mine, is doing the Chris Christie super PAC, and his response in the New York Times story was, he's like, our super PAC sent a memo to Chris Christie, which was, be yourself.
Oh, no.
And it's just the pushback is just so easy on all this. I mean, even Vivek, his response is like, Robot Ron, is doing his big donors bidding now. Why they thought this was necessary, smart, and then you get into the merits of the advice, which is also not good. Which is like, ignore Trump. You don't want to agree with somebody like Chris Christie who's auditioning for a show on MSNBC. Burn. And it's like, okay. okay.
That line's off the table now, right?
Yeah, right. All right. Well, that was maybe a good hit on Chris Christie, but now you can't use it. And it's like you're losing to Trump by 40 points. I get the you don't want him to turn into Charlie Sykes and Tim Miller, right? Okay, like that's I get that. If you're trying to beat Trump in the Republican primary, you're not trying to troll him on every possible thing, but you still have to offer voters something, don't you? And it was just hilarious to watch the National Review DeSantis fanboys like rending garments yesterday. They're just like, what is the point of this primary if you're not even going to at least make the case that Donald Trump, maybe it's not smart to nominate somebody who has 7 court dates next year. Like if you can't say that, then what is the point?
Noah Rothman over at National Review has really not been a DeSantis fanboy, but he did say this. He said, I don't understand why DeSantis is in the race at this point. If he thinks he can win the nomination by playing blocking tackle for the front runner, just stop wasting everyone's time and money. And even Elise Stefanik, proving the rule that even a blind squirrel finds the nut once in a while, says this is, as a former debate prep, the first and most obvious rule of debate prep is do not leak the debate prep memo. Right. I mean, he's right there. So this is going to be a little bit of a digression. You saw that sort of deep dive in the Washington Post this week about Ron DeSantis and, people, was it Josh Dawsey?
No, Ben Terrace about how awkward he is. Is it that one or a different one?
No, the other one.
There have been so many bad Ron DeSantis stories this week, it's hard to keep up. Sorry.
That's the problem. You're talking about the Ben Terrace piece about how, he's connecting with awkward Americans who see them. Okay, that was pretty.
It's like even awkward people that hate Ron DeSantis are starting to feel bad for him. I was like, this is when things start to get really, really rough. Anyway, go ahead.
So, half the audience is going, Tim and Charlie, American democracy is burning and you guys are laughing. Okay, because that's how we preserve our sanity here.
And because he deserves it.
So I'm talking about the story where they called around to people, Republicans in Florida, and they basically all said, yeah, this guy's a total asshole. He's always been an asshole. And let me tell you 10 stories. One of my reactions was, why didn't they make that phone call a year and a half ago? Because apparently it was really easy for donors, for journalists, for anyone to figure out that, hey, all of this projection on Ron DeSantis was based on, say, some misapprehensions about, Ron DeSantis, which are playing out in real time. So this was not a mystery. This was not a closely held secret.
No, it's not. And obviously Democrats would say that about him, but even like his colleagues, right? Like Barbara Comstock, it was very early. I remember when did we have Barbara Comstock on a Thursday night bulwark? I think it was even before he announced. And she was saying this, former Congresswoman Republican, who's broken correctly on the party. She was saying he didn't have friends. I will say, I do think people knew this, even the people that were getting behind him. I think they felt really trapped. And this was part of also, I think, I'm going to do some armchair psychological analysis, why there were these over-the-top attacks on us, right, for criticizing it, right? Because it was like, everyone's just going to get in line. Everyone's got to shut up and get in line. Like, yeah, okay, we've heard some things he's kind of weird, or, some of his policies, like he went way overboard on the Disney thing and the migrant shipping, but but he's our get-out-of-jail-free card. So if you don't like Trump, you just have to just shut up and get in line because he's our get-out-of-jail-free card and we're just going to take our chances.
And if you criticize Ron DeSantis on any of these things, that means that you secretly want Trump. Right. You really, you never Trumpers really are always Trump, because otherwise you would be sucking up to Ron DeSantis because he's the guy.
When literally the opposite was true, right? And I think we all made this point, so I don't want to credit to somebody, but early on, there was a case that was like bottoming out Ron DeSantis early is actually better, right? Because if this guy's not up for it, run him through the paces. So so maybe they could find somebody else. It's obviously too late for that now. And so the whole premise of that get in line behind Ron DeSantis element was just based on a fraudulent analysis of how good you'd be.
No, I think you're right. So for people who think that we're being unfair about this memo, I'm not sure anybody does anymore, but literally, let me just read this. There are 4 basic must-dos, the memo condescendingly explains to the governor of Florida. Number 1, attack Joe Biden in the media 3 to 5 times. I love the fact they put a number, but this is actually now, as I spend more time with it, state GRD, Mr. DeSantis, state GRD's positive vision 2 to 3 times, but no more than 3 times.
Not as many times as you talk about Joe Biden, because people get bored.
Attack the media, 5 times for the media, positive vision, nobody gives a shit. 3, hammer Vivek Ramaswamy in a response, defend Donald Trump in absentia in response to a Chris Christie attack. Now, all of this seems to be based on this great theory, the orchestra pit theory, which refers to Roger Ailes' belief that making mistakes and choreographing attacks will get more media attention. So this is the adage. You have 2 guys on stage. One guy says, I have a solution to the Mideast problem. The other guy falls into the orchestra pit, Ailes once said. Who do you think is going to be on the evening news? So real men of political genius like Jeff Rowe extrapolate from that and says, how can we fall into the orchestra pit?
I think you missed the point of the advice, but anyway.
So, does that mean that Florida man's going to throw himself into a mosh pit or something if things aren't going well for him? Or if Chris Christie says something nasty to him?
All my text chains are just blowing up with everybody who's ever, I've ever been in a debate prep with. The most generous among people in the text are like, maybe this is a head fake. Like, this is too stupid to not be a head fake. And maybe it'll make DeSantis seem tough that he doesn't listen to them, that he does attack Trump. I just don't think so. Yeah, I just don't think so.
No. Occam's razor is the simplest explanation is, no, it really is as dumb as it looks.
And I got to tell you, so just to own some of this, to show you why I think I have the credibility to say that this is as dumb as it looks, is that we had this fuck up at the Jeb's campaign, a similar version where we had prepared not a memo to Jeb. So it was not nearly as embarrassing as this, but it was, here are like the responses that we're going to put out if somebody attacks him, right? So it was like on like 20 issues. Like if you attack him because of Common Core, like here's what we're going to say, or if, Marco, whatever, is the hypocrite on this. And, some poor kid on our campaign accidentally like pressed play on the website or whatever. So like it went, these press releases went up on the website. They're up for like 2 minutes, but there were some tweets about it.
Long enough.
Yeah, it was long enough. There were some tweets about it, and it was like the most embarrassing 30 minutes of my life. Like I had to walk into a corner office and just like breathe into a bag for a couple of seconds. And luckily this happened 20 minutes before the debate. And so then the debate happens and there are other news, like this Ron DeSantis thing is happening a week in advance. So it's leading drudge right now. But I'm telling you, like these kinds of mistakes like do happen. And so like having lived through just how embarrassing and how painful like that small version of this is, I can just smell it. Like you can smell it when it happens and something's happened to you. And that's what this was. These guys thought that they were clever and could put it up on their own consulting firm's website and that people wouldn't see it. I don't know how you could be that stupid, but they were. The one other thing that's reminiscent about to me, do you remember Obamacare? Obamacare. This was my favorite. It's a little history lesson for the pre-Trump era people. My favorite debate strategist gaffe ever. There's this guy, Nick Ayers, who was like Jeff Rowe one time, the belle of the media ball, and everybody's like the great Republican strategist. Nick Ayers never won anything. He was Tim Pawlenty's strategist, and he leaked to the press ahead of the campaign that Pawlenty was going on stage and look at Mitt Romney and call Romney's healthcare policy Obamacare. This is like the old days where this was a tough attack in the pre-Trump era. And Pawlenty, being Minnesota nice, just couldn't do it. Like he got up there and he just didn't want to say it. And so he had previewed this big attack, and then Pawlenty didn't say it on stage. And so like the only news coverage after the debate was like Tim Pawlenty is too scared to criticize Mitt Romney. And this is like very reminiscent of that, but like on ultra steroids.
Tales from the before times.
Yeah, seriously.
These are the same geniuses who thought it was a great idea to launch the entire campaign on Elon Musk's show. Remember how that launch went? Yeah. And they probably told him, and that really went well, Governor. That really did. That was fabulous.
And then the same geniuses decided to have the Florida legislative session. I mean, Ron might just not have had it no matter what. But had he just got in when Trump got in and started focusing on electability initially, this is the big counterfactual. But instead, the geniuses are like, no, he needs to be governor for 5 months and pass all these far-right draconian cultural bills to like demonstrate that he's more conservative than Donald Trump. And it's like, wait a minute. So you're going to run a campaign where he's more electable than Donald Trump, but he also is more of a right-wing freak on cultural issues than Donald Trump? Like, were there any meetings where somebody was like, guys, I think that there's a little inconsistency here? Apparently not.
This is the problem. And, he obviously has a whole suite of problems, including his, lack of human authenticity. But it doesn't help the fact that his strategy seems to be, we are going to pander to the, forest right wing. We're going to surround ourselves with some of the most deplorable demagogues like the Christopher Rufos of the world and hire people like Nate Hochman, who thinks it's a good idea to put swastikas up on our ads and things like that. So at a certain point, you were saying last week, and I thought it was a really good insight.
Thank you.
About how Mike Pence now seems a little bit more comfortable in his skin. He knows he's not going to win. So he just basically is kind of leaning into it. Okay. So he feels liberated. Ron DeSantis is the exact opposite because he's like constantly attuned. Like, what is the base thinking? What are the based thinking? What is the right wing thinking? What is going to get the dopamine hit? So you're never actually thinking, what do I really think? What do I want to say? What is like, who the hell am I really? It's like
what animates me.
Yeah. Kind of the difference between, a gyroscope that actually, has a core as a center versus, constantly a radar. Like, is there a blip out there that I need to, that I need to follow? Hey, those are my people. I need to lead them, that whole thing. And I don't know how he gets around this. Okay. So
just really quick on this, some of our listeners will hate this analogy, but it's not a moral one. It is just a performance thing. But I do think it's similar to the problem that Kamala found herself in, and sometimes maybe still finds herself in at times. Yeah. And when I was interviewing Larry Wilmore about this, I was just like, as a Hollywood guy, like, what was your advice for Kamala? And he was basically like, she's just got to let loose and be more, and she's got to like demonstrate a more authentic self, right? Like even if it's, even if it's a little bit of an act, so to speak, as an actor, right? Like you have to like loosen up and just get comfortable with whatever your answers are going to be and whatever you're going to talk about. And instead, it's almost like when you watch interviews, you can kind of see the hamster wheel turning sometimes, right? And I think that's kind of what has hurt her a little bit. Obviously, there's some other stuff, race and sex and other issues that she's had. But that is I think, really happening with DeSantis. You can just feel him flailing and trying to figure out what to say, where he should fit.
But back to the point where, his opponents would say, just be yourself. I mean, there's sometimes when you really do not want to see the authentic real person.
That's maybe true.
It is not good. Okay,
wait, I'm sorry. One last thing. It's the authentic real person. Okay. Did you see, someone was tweeting, I do suffer through a lot of conservative media stuff for our listeners. I did not suffer through Ron DeSantis' book. Did you see that, like, somebody tweeted the excerpt from his book about where he met his wife?
No.
And how he met Casey? And it's like, and it starts by being like, I'm a guy that has good hand-eye coordination. And he starts talking about his baseball career. And then he's like, but my hand-eye coordination didn't always match to golf. And I was at a driving range and there was this woman who was getting good head speed. And it's just like, and this is Casey. So, I mean, if that's how he shows emotion describing meeting his wife, where he reflects on his own hand-eye coordination and golf head speed, maybe he's, to your point, maybe being the true authentic self isn't the answer. Maybe he needs to find a fake persona that feels authentic.
Well, he's been trying and it hasn't worked out for him. Now, I'm just hoping that this is the last time that you and I have to actually talk about Ron DeSantis, like ever, which is not true.
I wish.
Mediacom Business Internet is now more powerful than ever, with faster speeds, no data caps, and over 99.99% reliability. All levels now include advanced data security, an AI-driven first line of defense against malicious cyber threats to keep your business safe. Plus, Wi-Fi.
Zero. Trump does have, obviously, he's a malignant narcissist, and I think that if he was concerned that, the spotlight might be off of him, maybe he would have done it, but he doesn't have to do it. And I think that, I know you talked about this a little bit yesterday on the Thursday pod, and you are not quite as convinced about the genius idea of him, surrendering to Fani Willis on the day of the debate. And I'm not necessarily sure sure if it's a genius idea either, but it is a very Trumpy idea. And my MAGA, I've had some convos with MAGA World folks, for another thing I'm working on, and they've all decided that they think that's the thing that he should do. So I don't know whether that's it. He's going to do something. Maybe it's not the surrender. Maybe it's a Tucker Carlson interview. Maybe it's a rally. Maybe it's a press conference. But he's going to do something to counter program, and that makes a lot more sense.
Right, and of course the counter programming. Really, I don't think that he wants the image of himself being perp walked, in split screen with the other candidates. I mean, that is not the image. However, doing the Tucker thing or doing some other thing. Remember when he boycotted the Fox News debate? Didn't he hold like a rally and a claimed fundraiser for veterans? I don't know if the veterans ever got any money.
Yeah, no, it was a fundraiser, and then he never gave the money to the veterans. Then he got shamed into it.
So on brand. Okay, so before we get into the indictments and everything and your reaction to all of that, I'm surprised you didn't come on saying you were having mimosas in celebration of indictment 4 weeks.
I can only drink so much.
I mean, is this getting old for you?
I can only drink so much, Charlie. And I live in New Orleans now. Every time there's an indictment, I drink.
There's a lot of evidence.
People are inviting me places. I'm sober this morning.
Okay. So before we get to that, though, the CNN story that just broke this morning about Kenneth Chesebro, who is one of the lawyers who was the architect of the fake elector scheme, actually was born in Wisconsin and played a role here in Wisconsin. I'd never heard of him before all this happened. And I think he's probably kind of the least known of all of the lawyer plotters. He's certainly less well known than Rudy Giuliani or Jenna Ellis or Jeff Clark or Sidney Powell, all of those folks. But it turns out that he was actually at the Capitol on January 6th. And the detail that jumps out at me here is he was not just at the Capitol. He was hanging out with Alex Jones. And this is a great report, from CNN. Here's the report. When conspiracy theorist Alex Jones marched his way to the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, riling up his legion of supporters, an unassuming middle-aged man in a red Trump 2020 hat conspicuously tagged along. Videos and photographs reviewed by CNN show the man dutifully recording Jones with his phone as the bombastic media personality ascended to the restricted area of the Capitol grounds where mobs of then-President Donald Trump supporters eventually broke in. While the man's actions outside the Capitol that day have drawn little scrutiny, his alleged connections to a plot to overthrow the 2020 election have recently come into sharp focus. He is attorney Kenneth Chesebro, the alleged architect of the scheme to subvert the 2020 electoral college process by using fake GOP electors in multiple states. Okay, are you ready for kind of a golden oldie, kind of a flashback, Tim?
I'm pleased.
Okay, so keep in mind that here is one of these key players who has now been indicted, one of the key go-to guys in Trump world to overturn the election, and he's hanging around. He is hanging around with Alex Jones. This is the audio of a video that Alex Jones posted, I think it was 5 days before the insurrection. This is Alex Jones. This is the guy that Kenneth Chesebro was tagging along with. Alex Jones, I think beginning of January 2021. Just listen to this.
President Trump confirmed today, January 1st, 2021, that he is going to be speaking at a rally at an event coming up next Wednesday, January 6th. Now, we happen to know the location of that. We're going to lay it out for you now. But everybody has to get to D.C. There's going to be a huge rally at Freedom Plaza on the evening of the 5th on Tuesday. And then in the morning, it's going to open up at about 8 a.m. for everybody to get in to the ellipse that is just south of the White House. There's room for a lot of people, but not for the millions that'll be there. They'll be on the outside of that. And then we're going to march to the Capitol that's going to be holding the debate over the election that starts that day. This is a critical time in history. Now, I'm going to be speaking in D.C. Roger Stone's going to be speaking in D.C. General Flynn's going to be speaking in D.C. at multiple events. Roger Stone spent some substantial time with Trump in Florida just a few days ago, and I'm told big things are afoot and that Trump's got major action up his sleeve. Thank God he's not giving into this tyranny. Thank God he's not acquiescing and going along with the gaslighting and the fraud and the lie. There's no evidence of election scams because we have absolutely massive evidence, and the president must not concede. He must never concede because Joe Biden tried to steal this election, got caught doing it, and is a communist Chinese agent.
Whoa. Just kind of throws in there. And as a communist, which, by the way, Ken, would really be big if true.
It would definitely be news.
That's kind of a big throwaway line. Yeah,
I think it was something we talked about on the pod. The Roger Stone element of that, obviously all of that was insane, but the Roger Stone element of that I think is particularly interesting to re-listen to now, especially given that video that Ari Melber aired this week and others. There's a documentary about Roger Stone where it talks about him plotting this plan. And so, you don't need to put pictures on a wall and yarn to connect Chesebro, who is with Jones there on January 6th, and Stone, who was obviously talking to Jones, was working on this plot to come up with fake electors and to disrupt the count on January 6th.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you don't need to say, elaborately say this was a planned event, because they're going, wait, it was planned. We were doing all of this. And clearly, Alex Jones knew what was going on, was read into whatever the plan was. And he's talking about, Roger Stone spending time, and you're making a reference to this videotape, which I'm sure that many of our listeners have already heard, of Roger Stone, I think it was a couple of days after the election, basically dictating the fake elector plot, just laying it out exactly as they tried to do it. Okay, The reason I was asking about the mimosas before is that there is some speculation that with all of these indictments, there's a certain numbing effect. They'd be kind of a surreal sense that, okay, same old, but this is a big freaking deal. I mean, this is the week that Donald Trump was indicted on, I've lost track now, Tim, 13 more felony charges.
Up to 91.
He's up to 91 felony charges. And next week, he's going to be perp walked. I mean, maybe that's a term of art, but he's going to be fingerprinted fingerprint to be arrested. They will take his mugshot.
Now, there's a rumor going around. Okay, I won't answer the next question, but I should have had you ask this on the Trump Trials pod to the experts.
Yeah.
There's a rumor going around that he might get weighed. Is that too much to hope for?
Oh, come on. Our cup runneth over already.
I know, but I just, that would really be the icing on it. I mean, for me, the fingerprints, the tiny fingerprints, that's going to be exciting. The mugshot is exciting. But getting him weighed, I mean, there's just an indignity to that, especially because of his lies about his weight and, how sensitive he is of all that. I mean, there's just something about that would really be a chef's kiss for me.
Have you noticed there's kind of a division, though, among the anti-Trump world? There's a little bit of pearl clutching, like, oh, is this too much? Is this going to backfire? We don't want him to go to jail and everything. And I think you and I are in the camp of going, we better get the good champagne next week.
Yeah, no, we're on the same side of this. I think that there is legitimate reason to think it all through and to talk it through. I mean, we are in an unprecedented place. I do think that that's totally legitimate and that we should have, serious and sober-minded people that are trying to decide what to do here. I'm just not going to be one of them. I'm in the more pain is better camp. And this fucker deserves everything that he's coming to him. And I think, there has been a two-tiered system of justice, and he's been the one that's been treated unfairly in a way that has benefited him because he hasn't been treated like a regular common criminal that he is. And I'm glad that he's going to in Georgia. I'm not going to let any concerns about this other stuff get me down. I think there are legitimate concerns about domestic terrorism and legitimate concerns about our institutions and all that. But fuck him also, and that's where I land on.
Okay, so the big case is still the Jack Smith case in Washington, D.C., the January 16th. That is the case. This is very much an insurance policy in many ways because there is no presidential pardon here. There are mandatory minimums.
There's not even a governor of Georgia pardon here.
That's right. And the Georgia RICO statute is actually more potent for the prosecutors than the federal RICO charges. And in Georgia, you have all of the planets aligned. You have the fake elector plot, the lying, the tampering with voting machines, and you have an audio tape. Lordy, there are tapes. There are tapes of the former president trying to get. So there's a lot going on there. I'm not among those who are, wringing my hands about this. However, now can I be earnest because we've kind of been, we've had a light mood, and now I need to be a little bit earnest, and I apologize for the earnestness here. The attacks on the DA and the implicit threats against the grand jurors are a very, very dangerous moment here. And particularly as and I think I described it last night on one of the cable shows, is, Donald Trump is flicking lighted matches, at a bonfire that's already soaked in kerosene. And we are in a world right now where we have seen the potential of political violence, not the actual political violence, whether you're talking about a church in Charleston, a synagogue in Pittsburgh, a Walmart in El Paso, a grocery store in Buffalo, guys who send pipe bombs to journalists, an attack on the FBI office after the Mar-a-Lago raid, a MAGA extremist with an arsenal of guns in Utah who was killed by the FBI. And I am just scratching the surface here. This is a really dangerous moment. And Donald Trump is continuing to escalate the rhetoric. His supporters are continuing to escalate their tactics, including doxing the jurors. I mean, at some point, we're going to find out how far the judges are going to let him go. But also, you would think that at least some Republican voices, other than, say, Chris Christie, et cetera, and others, would say, look, at minimum, we need to lower the temperature of the rhetoric. We need to be aware of how dangerous this is, that these toxic ideas can have fatal consequences. So the bare minimum would be for somebody on that debate stage who is not necessarily anti-Trump to say, okay, whatever criticism we might have about this or qualms we might have about this, what we cannot do is to continue to foment this kind of irrational hatred because it's going to end badly. And it's so predictable. Isn't that Trump derangement syndrome? We saw what happened on January 6th. We've seen one guy in one city with a gun who is deciding that America is being taken away. Because if you actually believe that the country has been taken over, has been stolen by an agent of the Chinese communists, right, and has destroyed our democracy, and they hate God and they hate America and they hate everything good and decent in America, then what is the response?
Right.
This sludge is being pumped out every single day, and you and I don't even see all. We spend a lot of time on conservative media, but there is that dark, far right world out there that has millions of people who are listening to this. It is really a dangerous situation. So there ends my earnest rant, because I am, to quote our good friend Bill Kristol, I'm alarmed.
Yeah, and there's a lot there. I share your earnest concern about this, and I think there are two elements of that in particular. The first one, just to speak to the previous question, I mean, obviously I want to see Donald Trump punished because he deserves it and because it would feel good. Yeah. But also, he needs to be treated in the same way that other defendants fomenting violence would be treated. And even Alberto Gonzalez and Bill Barr, we have not seen a lot of courage from Republican politicians. I'll get to them in a second. But these are not exactly squishes, okay? We're out there saying that these are legitimate indictments. Barr said that he thinks he could possibly be convicted by next summer. Gonzalez said that there's no reason to think, our friends at Republican Accountability Project put this out, that there's no reason to think that, he would not have been indicted on this if he was not running as a candidate. All this stuff would absolutely still be going through. This is not political. And so I want to take that one step further, which is another defendant. If this was, one of the other RICO cases in Georgia is, targeting these rappers, YGL. And if they were out there doing rap songs about how people should shoot up Fonnie Willis's house, there would be real legal ramifications for that. And that's basically what Donald Trump is doing. And there should be real legal ramifications for that. And I hope that he does not continue to be treated lightly. And that's just where I fall on the merits of all this. I get that they're different.
Well, I completely agree with you.
On the Republicans, really quick, on the Republican candidates.
Yeah, sure.
I just think this has to be said. And this is the thing that really gets my dander up. We always talk about the same people. The handful of good Republicans left, the Chris Christies, the Mitt Romneys, and then the crazies, right? But there are a lot of other Republicans out there that just continue to remain silent. I was speaking to, there's a great group, Carolina Forward. If you live in North Carolina, look them up. I spoke to them this week. And I was talking about Tom Tillis. And it's like, where is Tom Tillis? Tom Tillis knows fucking better. He knows that this is wrong. He knows Donald Trump shouldn't be president again. He knows that the coup effort was wrong. He knows that threatening DAs are wrong. He believes in the rule of law. And people like Tom Tillis are just absent. Like they're just cowering in the corner and hiding. And even Chris Noon is out there doing interviews this week, and he's like, well, if we get it down to a one-on-one with Trump, then it's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, you guys need to wake up to the reality that you are in and be responsible and be leaders and try to turn down the temperature and help on the margins and not just say, oh, some magic fairy is going to come help us and save this in the future. There is no fairy.
It is the magical thinking, something, unicorn, asteroid, something's going to do this as long as we don't have to do it. But I think that, if a Tom Tillis were to stand up and say, hey, listen, we cannot have, more violence. We can't have this kind of rhetoric. It's hard for me to imagine that 10, 15, 20 years from now, he or his children would look back on that and regret it. Right. They said, this was a good thing, the right thing. Okay, so I want to read something to you, okay? Joe Klein, famous Joe Klein, has a newsletter, which is actually really, really good.
Nice guy.
Yeah, and he has a piece about, thinks Democrats should be a bit louder about all of this. And I have mixed feelings about it, but I want to get your take on this, okay? I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs. Okay. Not to put too fine a point on it, Klein writes, Donald Trump is a ridiculous human being, but he's a bully. And so no one has the courage to treat him the way he treats other people. No one ever asks, why is your face so orange? Or what is that thing on top of your head? Do you really want to look like Stanley Tucci in The Hunger Games? Or even a more restrained, how long, sir, does it take you to prepare your hair every morning? Or why didn't you just Photoshop those pictures of your inauguration crowd to prove you had more people than Obama? Or did you really want to make that Texas doofus Surgeon General? Or weren't you pretty terrible appointing judges and so many of them throughout your election fraud cases? Why 63 different judges cost you your lawsuits?
That's a good one.
And he goes on to say, treating Donald Trump with respect is not just unwarranted, it defies the law of the playground because you stand up to bullies. You expose their cowardice. You make fun of them. You say, I'm rubber, you're glue. Everything you say to me bounces back on you. Jack Smith is deranged. Projection. Trump is really talking about himself. Of course, Joe Biden himself cannot do this, not presidential, but his silence about this summer in Trumpland hasn't been very effective either, has it? He has said nothing about the seriousness of the indictments. It is a president's job to explain these things, to put them into perspective. He has allowed tawdry creeps like Jim Jordan to demean the authority of the Justice Department, and Biden's surrogates are even worse. Would the rule of law collapse if Merrick Garland showed some righteous anger? Would it be untoward to suggest that more Americans, especially those who associate Garland's supine silence with weakness, might think twice about Trump if Democrats actually started to fight back in ways that people who did not go to